Well, we knew it was going to happen sooner or later. We just kind of thought that it would happen later and certainly not mid-tournament. But Terunofuji, the 73rd Yokozuna in sumo history, has announced his retirement. We are going to discuss why he retired and what that means for sumo today on the New to
Let's
Sumo
start the
podcast.
show. New to sumo, here we go.
On January 16th, on what would have been the sixth day of the January sumo tournament, the Yokozuna Terunofuji officially announced his retirement one day after declaring Kyujo and withdrawing from day five of the tournament. Though he had been feeling pretty well leading up to the tournament, Patricia Dobashi on Blue Sky reported that things had not been going quite well. In fact, he injured his knee just about 10 days ago, which had exacerbated some lower back issues that he's been dealing with forever. Between his knee issues, his back issues, and his diabetes, he decided to give the January tournament a go, but things unraveled pretty quickly. Day one, he lost pretty quickly and easily to Wakataka Kage. He seemed to rebound with two hard-fought wins over longtime adversaries Takanosho and Kirishima. But day four, things just totally went awry. He lost to his absolute nemesis, Tobizaru, and that was it. Sat out day five, gave up a Fusen to Gonoyama, and that was the last we saw of Terunofuji. So we head into a period of vast uncertainty, even though we are right in the middle of a tournament.
It's a very weird feeling. There had always been this underlying presence of Terunofuji in the last 2, 3 years, even though he had sat out the majority of that time due
Hmm.
to injury. But there is such a different feeling to know that he's not going to be wrestling again, especially coupled with the fact that typically after sitting out two, even three tournaments in a row, when he came back, usually he was at his best, at the very best. I mean, of the tournaments that he finished in the last several years, he won just about all of them, save
Hmm.
for one or two, which really showed us that he was just in a league of his own, and the only thing stopping him from being the dominant force in the sport was the thing that was outside of his control, which was his health. So to see it end like this is just it's upsetting, honestly. I remember, a few tournaments ago when he won in pretty decisive fashion. I was thinking at the time, like, I'm surprised that he's not just going to retire now that he's got his 10th Yusho win. It seems like such a fitting moment, get the double digits. So few Yokozuna in history have gotten the double digits, and this might be a really fitting moment. And what we were told at the time is that he was really going to push for more, and you got to respect that. And we knew he was capable of it if he could keep the illnesses and everything in check, but obviously that just wasn't possible. And I think it's just a little bit more upsetting to see it happen like this, to lose two of his first four matches in this tournament and then suddenly dip out right in the middle of it, right in a moment where we're not sure, at least at the time of recording, whether we're going to have a different Yokozuna by the end of this tournament or if we're going to be waiting a long time without one. So the absence will really be felt this time in a way that I don't think we've had in a long time. I mean, when was the last time that there was, potentially no Yokozuna?
Right before we started recording this, I looked it up. You have to go all the way back to 1992. Terunofuji had literally just been born the last time we went any length of time without a Yokozuna. We had just four tournaments in 1992. Then the great Yokozuna Akebono finally took charge. Rest in peace, Akebono. And, we've had just nothing but consistency, just had nothing but Yokozunas since then, and quite a number of them. Prior to that four tournament run, though, you have to go all the way back to the 1800s to find a time where we didn't have an active Yokozuna in sumo. that is how consistent there has been just an alpha dog in the sport of sumo. And most of the people that are in charge of the Sumo Association have never had to deal with a situation like this. The guy who runs the Sumo Association right now, Kitanumi, sorry, not Kitanumi, but Hakaku Oyakata, he was the Yokozuna who retired to usher in that era of uncertainty. And he's one of the oldest people that's currently running the entire sport. So these guys have no idea how to handle a situation like this.
It's It's very weird. It's hard to kind of think of sumo without the presence of a Yokozuna. It feels like something's sorely missing when you don't have that dominant force. And that's the way that sports goes. There isn't always a Lionel Messi or a Floyd Mayweather in your sport at all times. But at least for the longest time, for many present day sumo fans, there has been a force like that. At least one person who can consistently be dominant in every tournament they compete in. And it's very weird. We've talked about this. This has been a theme for so many of the shows, really, since we started the channel, this theme of parity that we've seen in the sport. And I think that's going to become even more stark with Terunofuji retiring. It's going to feel like there just isn't that one person who's going to take over the sport. And in the last tournaments, we saw two guys who were both vying for Yokozuna promotion. At the time of recording, we're not sure if either of them are going to do it. Maybe one will. It's possible that Hoshoryu will take over the mantle immediately. Maybe Kotozakura somehow makes it happen later in the tournament. But I think it really calls into question what we love about sports in a way. I mean, for me, I think one of the greatest joys in watching a sport is watching someone do something that just nobody else can do. All of these men are at the absolute top of their game in a skill that is so specialized that takes a lifetime of training to do. And yet, even among all of these incredible athletes and gladiators, there's one person who can completely dominate the field. And it's this extraordinary, special, moving kind of experience to watch them be so amazing at what they do. So, that's how I'll remember Terunofuji. It would have been great again, to see his career end on a high note of him winning the Yusho like he did last year. But still, like that's who he was, and I think maybe the circumstances of his retirement also raised some interesting topics about health in the sports and is the JSA doing enough to mitigate the risks of injury in the sport? I'm not putting this retirement on them necessarily. Of course, injuries happen to all athletes, but I just wonder if there are larger conversations to be had about the significance of this being the cause of his retirement, at a fairly young age.
I mean, I think we definitely need to have a there needs to be like a deeper conversation on how the sport handles injuries if they want to ensure that the top guys are given the chance to prove that they're up top. Because Terunofuji is the fact that he was able to drop as far as he did down the Bansuke when he first suffered his major injury, only to climb all the way back up. I mean, he's one in a million for that. But you look at all the other guys who haven't been able to, and a single injury just it turns their career into just like a full stop. The we Taka Keisho who just retired. You've got Kirishima who looks like a shell of his former self now. You've got Asanoyama who, has just been beset by injury after injury. Like these are three guys that between like 2021 and 2023, we're talking about them like all three of those guys potentially being Yokozuna. And now, one's retired, one is, going to be lucky if he can fight at the same level again, and a third one is just a total question mark. So I think, if the JSA, I think, is really concerned about, making sure that they do the most to elevate their stars into even bigger stars, then maybe it's time to finally take a deeper look at how they handle, dropping guys that are forced to withdraw due to injury. If there's one benefit that can come to the sport for Terunofuji's retirement, I would hope it's that.
Yeah, one thing I could definitely say for sure, and I imagine I speak for many people in saying it, he's going to be sorely missed. Terunofuji was a really special presence in the sport. He's been around for as long as I've been watching it. He's been dominant in and out of tournaments for as long as I've been watching it. And for a long time, Sumo's not going to feel the same without him. So, he'll be missed. I really wish him the best of luck in the rest of his life, and more than anything, the best of health, throughout the rest of his life. I would love to see him stay involved in the sport. I don't know to what extent that's his plan, but I would love to see him around and see what he's getting up to and everything, and just really wishing him all the best.
Man, with the way we're talking about him, it almost sounds like we're doing a funeral for the
No,
guy.
no, no.
He's got more than enough great. Let's talk about some of the positives for a second, just as far as Terunofuji goes. I think the consensus seems to be that he is the next in line to take over his sumo stable, the absolutely massive Isagahama stable, whose head Isagahama Oyakata, a former Yokozuna himself. He's going to be retiring in July. Terunofuji will probably stay on as like a coach until then, and then maybe, either buy or inherit the stable from him. We already know he's got a wife and at least one kid, so there's a chance we could see baby no Fuji in the ring sometime in the distant future. And, much like the other Yokozuna who have retired, it's very likely that he's going to be just a continued presence in the sport, the way that Hakuho or Kisa Sato or Kakuryu have remained in the sport. So even though we won't see him in the ring much, I have a strong feeling that, we won't this won't be the last time that we've seen Terunofuji on a sumo Saturday or Sunday if he has his way. So there's a lot of Terunofuji to look forward to. And you know what? Why don't we take a minute just to look back on his absolutely phenomenal career before we call it a day. He debuts in 2011, and the last opponent that he faces is a Jonakuchi wrestler by the name of Meisei. In his very first tournament, he goes up against Meisei. Terunofuji and Meisei will go on to face each other quite a bit through the years. In fact, 13 times over a 13-year career. So it's weird. They face off against each other twice in his first two tournaments, and then not at all again for the next 10 years as Terunofuji just ascends while Meisei just, kind of crawls his way up the ladder. He goes through the Makushita ranks, at a very steady pace, winning a Sendanme title along the way. Changes his name from Wakamisho to Terunofuji after he gets promoted to Juryo in 2013. And his career just takes off in 2013. Climbs through Juryo with ease, and in 2014 he makes his Makuuchi debut. It takes him, I want to say, yeah, it takes him only a year from his Makuuchi debut to reach Sekiwake, and then just two more tournaments to reach Ozeki. He wins his first tournament in the May 2015 tournament, a tournament in which he lost to Hakuho, is his fourth of many such losses to Hakuho, but then again, who hasn't lost to that guy? And then it just seems like, like it's smooth sailing for him. He spends the next 2 years, vacillating between winning records and losing records due to injuries and the occasional poor performance. It really seems in 2017 like he's almost got it. He gets back-to-back Jun show, wins 25 matches over two tournaments, and then everything goes haywire. Just back-to-back losing records, just cannot make fight his way back up. Between 2017 and 2019, he wins a grand total of two matches as he's forced to sit out countless tournaments. Winds up dropping all the way down to Joni Don when he finally returns in 2019. And then the comeback starts and it does not stop. Jonidan wins the title. Sandanme, only one loss. Makushita, only two losses over two tournaments. Wins a Makushita title, wins a Juryo title, winning record in Juryo, then becomes just the second man ever to win an entire Yusho from Makuchi, from Maikashira 17, and then just climb, has his big fight with Hakuho to reach Yokozuna, after winning a Yusho the tournament before, and that was all she wrote. It was, he gets the rope, becomes the 73rd Yokozuna in history, and he wins his first two tournaments as the Yokozuna, but then those injuries just come back. He wins another tournament, second place in a tournament, but the injuries come back. He starts developing diabetes. And, every time he comes back, he seems to win a U-show, but he just can't complete consecutive tournaments anymore. And, that will really sort of be the story of his Yokozuna career, which is winning it all when he's healthy, but just missing more tournaments than he actually finishes.
Yeah, it's, on the one hand, I'm sure many people will think of Terunofuji as, what could have been, the kind of dominance he could have had it not been for injuries. But at the same time, the things he did despite the injuries, the amount of success he's had, if you were to just remove all the injured time, like he's had more Yusho wins than many Yokozuna in history. He's among some of the greatest of all time still. And I think that's really the most important way to remember his legacy.
I mean, you just have to consider one more thing. This is a guy that went on to win nine more tournaments, including, more than half of which were as Yokozuna after having basically obliterated his knee back in 2017. So this is a guy that has been fighting, the latter half of his career at most like 80% of what he was physically capable of, about 7 or 8 years ago. And, I this is a guy who the sport is seriously, seriously going to look back on even more favorably if we don't get another Yokozuna who performs exactly like him very soon.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of the closing thoughts that I have about Terunofuji's retirement is that his presence, being not just a Yokozuna, but being a great Yokozuna, it could be a while until we have a person who really steps into that role. Regardless of whether or not he competed in every tournament, knowing that that guy was there who, when he's at his best, can win just about any tournament he's in. Um, it could be a while until we see someone like that. I think we see some really promising candidates to take over that mantle, but even if we do have a Yokozuna by the end of this tournament, I don't think it's going to be a Terunofuji level dominance that we see from Hoshoryu or whoever else, eventually becomes that next Yokozuna. It could be a long time, hopefully, sooner rather than later, but there are very few in the world quite like Terunofuji.
It's a new era, and whether this is an era that people look back on very fondly or a little less fondly, it's going to be an interesting one, and we're definitely looking forward to seeing how it all plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, get involved in the comments. Let us know your thoughts on Terunofuji's retirement. We'd love to hear what you're thinking about the whole situation. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll be back again soon to talk about this tournament and how it all plays out. Following this pretty wild news midway through.
It's gonna be a wild one, and let's hope that the finish is at least fun.
That's for sure. Alrighty, see you guys next time.
Take care, everybody.
Bouts and shouts your weekly treat. Every champion you'll meet. Ring the gong, it's time to learn. Sumo tales at every turn. New to Sumo Podcast Fun.